So without further ado, I give you Dr. Dallas Willard.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here. And my goodness, the energy that's flowing around here. At USC, we know a lot about Ohio State through football. And apparently you're doing very well this year. Go Trojans! Who said that? Yeah. Okay, well, I want to jump right into my talk this evening because I have more to say to you than I can get said in the time. And we'll have a little help from the slides, and I hope you can read them from all the way in the back. But we'll cover it, and it's very important material that we have to talk about this evening. The title you'll see from your papers, or you've already heard, is The Genius of Jesus, the University, and the Question of God. And all of this comes under the heading of what it means to be human. There was a statement projected up here just a moment ago. Any system of education that ignores the moral and religious nature of the student is fundamentally defective. And what I'm here tonight to say is that's the system we have. And I'm probably going to say a few things that will be a little bit inflammatory in the course of my remarks. I don't have time to tell you all the things I don't mean by the things that I will say. But we need to address this question very directly because it is essential to the human being to have to find knowledge to base life on. That is essential to humanity. You could even say that the burden of human existence is to find an adequate knowledge basis for life. And unique among all living species, that falls to the human being. So we're talking about human nature. And we can't just hatch out and run like quails. And dogs don't sit around on the back porch wondering if they have enough bones laid up for their declining years. We do. We have to deal with our future. Human beings are responsible for their future. They determine what their future will be, and they determine who they're going to be in their future. What kind of person are they going to be? And that requires knowledge. Now, sometimes I have to explain on a university campus what knowledge is. And not everyone who is in my classes can tell me why they're in the class. I think they have the idea that, well, they have to get through this, and they need credits. But actually, the only point of taking classes is to gain knowledge. And that may sound trite, but in fact it isn't. Because you rarely meet anyone today who can tell you what knowledge is. And so I'm going to tell you. We have knowledge when we have the ability to represent things as they are on an appropriate basis of thought and experience. That's what knowledge is. That's what you hope you've got when you go to the doctor or an automobile mechanic. You hope you've got someone who can represent things as they are on an appropriate basis of thought and experience. And good luck to you. And lots of grace, because often it's not there. And we have to be very careful and define knowledge, and not define knowledge in a way that presupposes a lot of answers to things. In particular, the problem on our campus today can be expressed very simply. We have defined knowledge in such a way that the most important matters of human life cannot be subjects of knowledge. I pause to allow you to think of that. And we have defined knowledge in such a way that truth itself is in real trouble. In case you missed it, veritas means truth. And knowledge involves truth. But in many parts of the university today, in our culture, truth itself is laughable. And we have whole philosophical systems that affect our culture that really set truth aside as a reasonable goal for human beings. Now, the university's role still is to find truth. I put up here, I serve on accreditation site committees for the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, or WASC. And the first statement in the standards for WASC as an accrediting agency is integrity in the pursuit of truth. The first sentence under that standard is, an institution of higher education is by definition dedicated to the search for truth and its dissemination. So we're in a strange position. Perhaps the one statement that is written on more university and college walls than any other is, the truth will make you free. But if truth is not a legitimate goal, is not something that is rational and makes sense and is available to people, then of course it won't make you free. It won't do much of anything for you. And really what we're in today is a kind of tension between truth and desire. And truth, like reality and desire, always come into conflict. And that's where belief comes in. Belief is like the rails upon which our life runs. When you believe something, you act as if it were true. You believe those chairs will hold you up. And that's why you're sitting there like you are. If you didn't believe them to be reliable, how would you be sitting there? Well, certainly not like you are. Not relaxed, not confident. See, that's belief. And what we need is to have beliefs that are true. But we often believe what we don't know, and sometimes we know what we don't believe. And this is a common human phenomena. We could talk a lot about it tonight in concerning human nature. But the truth is, we know a lot of stuff we don't believe because our will is set against it. And that happens over and over in human life, in the intimate relations of life, as well as in the larger scene, culture and government and so on. But leadership requires that followers believe that the leader knows what he or she is doing, and that the leader has truth. And in all of our organizations of life, we have to have that confidence in order to follow those who are leading. If we don't, we won't follow. We have to be confident that they know the truth. And sometimes they manufacture it. Now, you can't manufacture truth. No one has ever yet made a proposition true by believing it or by saying it. That's the bitterness of truth, is the truth stands there and it doesn't matter how many people believe it or like it. That won't make it true. And 10 million Frenchmen can be wrong. 10 million Americans can be wrong. Because truth is totally indifferent to who believes it or who doesn't. But to manipulate truth, leaders and tendencies in culture often manufacture rumors of knowledge where there really isn't any knowledge. And we see a lot of this in our world today. For example, we remember the CEO controversies, Enron and so on. See, these were people who were manufacturing rumors of knowledge, rumors of truth. And our contemporary society, with its news, is rife with rumors. I don't know if you listened to all of the experts who were telling us about the snipers that were shooting people on the East Coast and elsewhere. They were nearly all wrong. But the news puts them on, and here's a rumor, and someone says, well, there's research, and belief actually and desire forms the rumors by which we live. And so we need to be very careful about that. Rumors of knowledge originate from those who have authority in a culture. But often those rumors are more responses to what someone wants than they are knowledge. I said a moment ago, there's always a conflict between desire and truth. Because desire outruns truth. Always a conflict. You see this in personal relationships. Look at the dating scene and see how far desire outruns truth. People trying to get along with one another in a neighborhood, a political campaign. And so there's always this danger that instead of having knowledge and truth with it, desire and will push that aside and promote mere rumors of truth. And then people will live by those, and their lives can be ruined by them. Now, there really are 4 great questions of life. And the reason that Jesus stands forth as someone who should be heard in a university context is because of the centrality of these 4 questions. 4 great questions. One is the nature of reality. That may sound to you like some metaphysical question that's irrelevant. That's the most important question you'll ever deal with. And the university teaches an answer to that question. Not necessarily by a course on reality. I doubt that you would find a course on reality at Ohio State. We don't have them at USC. We need them, but we don't have them. But the question, what is reality, an answer to that is provided by the way we conduct ourselves. Here's what we're asking. We say, what is reality? Think of it like this. Reality is what you have to deal with. And when you go through a university, you pick up answers to that question. What do I really have to deal with? Another way of thinking about the question is to say reality is what you run into when you're wrong. That's reality. And then you have to deal with it. Now, one of the beautiful things about truth is it enables you to harmonize your life with reality. Instead of running into it, you can prosper in your relationships with it. That's the most basic question in your life. What is reality? What are you going to have to deal with? And the answer that often comes in our culture is, well, your body is reality. I go through a lot of airports, and you go by magazine stands. And you look at these profound issues that are raised on the fronts of magazines. Mostly they have to do with things like buns and abs. You know, that's reality for many people. Or I saw one today that said something about having a beautiful skin. Well, you know, if people understood and invested in the things that are really going to affect their lives as much as they do in the things that are going to make very little difference, but are merely treated as important in our world, they would be much better off and able more to live the lives that they want to live. Well, the first question there is, what is the nature of reality? Now, every person has to deal with that question, and every institution deals with it, and our education is organized around it, usually, however, in some narrow focus, so that we come to be technically competent in some area and deal with that reality very well, but it leaves our life as a whole untouched. Look at the other 3 questions. Who is well off? That's the second question. Everyone has to deal with that, one way or another. Who has the good life? Who has blessedness? Then, who is a really good person? This one actually is more important for most people than the second question. You can get in a fight quicker by questioning someone's goodness than you can by questioning whether they're well off. Because it goes right to the heart of the person. Am I, as a person, worthwhile? Am I worth admiring and supporting? And do I have something to contribute to the world? And then the final question, how do you become a really good person? Now, let me just say, you and I will practice answers to those questions no matter what we do or say. We're going to practice answers to those questions. Let me say that every university conveys answers to those questions. See, there's a myth in our culture that at universities we don't teach morality. We teach morality. And if you get crosswise of it, you will find out how real and how forceful that morality is. We convey an impression as to who is well off and who is a good person. Universities answer these questions. Now, not in straightforward and a responsible manner. So you won't have a course in which you deal with these issues of being well off or being a good person in explicit terms. It will be conveyed by the whole spirit of the campus, by the attitudes, the suggestions of language, the examples that are set, and what is regarded as adequate teaching and research in the various fields. All of those will convey answers to the four questions. For example, today it is assumed that in no field of knowledge is knowledge of God required. I'm going to say that again because actually you're apt to think, why is he even talking about that? I say, the assumption in the answers that the university gives is that expertise in no field of knowledge requires a knowledge of God. So it doesn't matter what your field is, French literature, business administration, chemistry, mathematics, whatever it is. The assumption is God is irrelevant. Now that is not something that was discovered, but it is something that has evolved. You see, there are really three basic stories. Three stories that frame the human approach in life that we're familiar with here in Western culture, at least. And these three stories are a theistic story, that ultimate reality is a personal God, indeed a community in himself, the Christian story of theism, and that's ultimate reality, and everything derives from a personal God who is ultimate. And see, when that statement that I quoted that was projected up here earlier about how any system of education that doesn't take into account the moral and religious nature of the student is inadequate, did you notice the date on that? That was 1882. Now, in that time, the story underlying the university was a theistic story. The other stories have come to the front, and really the third one here that I have on my list, the materialist story, is the one that turned us away from the theistic story. The physical universe itself is the only ultimate reality. And that is the official underlying assumption of all of our educational system today. There is now moving into the vacuum, the spiritual vacuum that is left by vacating the theistic story, the nirvana story. Everything derives from a reality that is undifferentiated, the realm of no thing, and that is what we sometimes call a New Age story. You have three stories. And one of those stories is going to frame your life, it's going to frame my life, it's going to frame our cultural institutions, it's going to frame a university setting. And there's no real option outside of those three. Now, agnosticism can sometimes appear to be an option. And often you find people who don't really want to discuss it, and they say, well, I'm an agnostic. Well, agnosticism is an interesting term. An agnostic is someone who is without knowledge. And I think the Latin for that is ignoramus. And see, that's why it's not a comfortable position. Because agnosticism really is not just the saying, I don't know. It's rather a stronger claim which says, we cannot know. It is impossible to have knowledge. And to defend we can't know is as tough a job as defending one of those three stories. Now see, we're going to go back to those three stories now. One of those three is going to be the one that governs. And in the academic world today, the theistic story is taken to be totally irrelevant to course content and serious research. That makes sense? That's the way it is. Now, individuals may have a faith in God. That's okay, as long as they don't introduce that into their knowledge. As long as they don't make that some kind of knowledge claim. But the historical power of Jesus has been precisely the way in which he has responded to these issues of human life.